1971 was the year we got introduced to a British crime film called Get Carter. It was written and directed by Mike Hodges, and this was his directorial debut. The movie starred Michael Caine, Ian Hendry, John Osborne, Britt Ekland, and Brian Mosley. It's based on Ted Lewis's 1970 novel entitled Jack Returns Home. The plot revolves around Michael Caine, who plays Jack Carter, a small-time hood working in London for the Fletcher brothers, when word reaches him of his brother's death in Newcastle. All this under very suspicious circumstances. Carter leaves London for his home city of Newcastle to arrange his brother's funeral. While preparing for the burial, he becomes obsessed with learning who murdered his sibling and why, because he refused to accept the police report that it was a suicide. He seeks out his brother's friends and acquaintances, and he tries to question them, but he finds a wall of stony silence. Operating on a bit of a hunch, he follows a sleazy chauffeur named Eric, played by Ian Hendry, to local crime lord Kinnear's home, and is surprised to find himself more than welcome there. Before he leaves, he's warned to return to London before he causes any trouble. He ignores this warning, and soon attempts are made on his life. After a narrow escape, he is rescued by Kinnear's girlfriend, Glenda, played by Geraldine Moffat. She goes on to take him to her place, where they end up making love. And afterwards, while Glenda is out of the room, he discovers a dirty film starring, among others, his brother's young daughter. Carter then sets out on a path of vengeance against those implicated in his brother's death, and the film proceeds on to its shocking ending. This production went from novel to finished film in about 8 months, with principal photography taking place from July to September of 1970. The whole intent of the film was to create a more realistic portrayal of violence and criminal behavior than had previously been seen in many British films. The director was pretty surprised that Michael Caine wanted to play this part of Carter, and Caine states that one of the reasons that he wanted to make the picture was his background. His working-class upbringing, having friends and family members who were involved in crime, made him feel like that this character that he's portraying might have been his path in life under different circumstances. The film shows a beach that's black with coal that's being dumped there by a mine's conveyor system. That conveyor system was a common sight on the East Durham coast. It was known locally as the Flight. In the early 2000s, a lot of money was spent removing these conveyors and the concrete towers that accompanied them and cleaning up tons of coal waste from those beaches. That cleaning program was known as Turning the Tide. The director Hodges had chosen this beach because of its dismal, bleak setting. The atmosphere was dark, but when they returned to this beach to shoot the scene, they found it completely bathed in bright sunlight, which was absolutely unsuitable for the somber conclusion which he was hoping for. They had to sit there for hours twiddling their thumbs until the sun began setting in order to capture the overcast, shadowy lighting that they needed for the movie. Not long after the film was released, Michael Caine was in the West End, and he came across the gangster upon whose life the movie is really based. He was highly critical of the film, saying that there was no gangster in the world like Jack Carter, who had no wife, children, or responsibilities of any kind. Rather than argue with the criminal, Caine agreed with everything he said and moved on. The location of the house that they used for Cyril Kinnear's house provided a real-life connection with organized crime itself. It recently was the vacated country house of a Northeast fruit machine businessman named Vince Landumc, who had fled the country in 1969 after the murder of his right-hand man, Angus Sibbett. Many people in that area believe that that crime was part of a failed attempt by the Cray twins to gain control of the Newcastle underworld. The production company and the studio dismissed this location as being just a mere coincidence. However, the writer and director Mike Hodges was completely aware of the significance of this house and chose it deliberately. The production utilized a large number of extras, most of whom were locals who just happened to be on scene when the filming was happening. Others were sourced from a local casting company, which sent everyone that was registered with it for auditions, one of those being Deanna Wild, who was cast as the pub singer. Several of the company's actors were also used in the background shots of the movie, including the casino, the streets, the bars, and the police raid scene. That club singer, Deanna Wild, is seen flirting and fighting in the movie, and it's said that in real life, she was a larger-than-life character who livened up every place she was in Newcastle. She apparently used a walking stick and was renowned for her liberal use of curse words, no matter who she was talking to or where she was at. In the final scene, the assassin is identified only by the initial J on his ring. This character was played by Carl Howard, which was his only movie role, and an appropriate mystery also surrounds his real identity. His name does not appear in the credits of some prints. Director Mike Hodges explained that Howard was an extra in a television movie that he did from 1970. Hodges gave him a line to say, but another extra was wrongly credited with it. The director then promised to make it up to him in telling him that he would cast him in this movie, but his name was missed off of some of the original prints. When the movie credits were printed in the Radio Times and TV Times, Howard was trimmed again. The director finally said in 2002 that Carl and his credits don't seem to be destined for each other. Now, Britt Ekland, the beautiful blonde in this film, was really reluctant to do this movie. She was scared of becoming typecast, having already played 2 gangster girlfriends before. But that really was the least of her problems. She wasn't excited about having to take her clothes off in this film, and she really struggled with the idea of doing it. However, she had some pretty serious financial problems at the time as a result of some bad investment decisions by her accountant, and this really forced her into the role and the nudity that was involved in it. After the film was done, she states that she was happy that she was involved in the project. A little bit later on, she fell into the same trap that so many of these gorgeous Hollywood stars fall into. As they begin to age a little, they try to tweak their looks by having cosmetic surgery done. Britt is one that expressed her regret for having her surgery done. She states that it ruined her face. One of the things that this beautiful girl had done to her face was called lip plumping, a procedure that she underwent in her 50s. She didn't receive the results that she expected. It was done by a Paris-based doctor, and she had multiple injections around the rim of her lips with a product that's called Articol, which was supposedly all the rage at the time. This is rarely used by surgeons today. She states now that it's pointless to complain about it or wishing that she could change it. What's done is done. What she regrets more than anything is having to deal with the pictures that newspapers and tabloids printed with these horrible pictures of her. For a long time afterwards, she couldn't do any television or films. If you've never seen Get Carter, take the time to watch it. It's a good one. Michael Caine does an excellent job in his role as this gangster. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.